So welcome back to my channel, Margaret Knob Designs. Thanks so much for joining me and going through this video with me. I just finished this Autumn Orchard mini album with the Graphic 45 basic album. It's an old style, the one that they're not carrying any longer. And what I wanted to do was show you how to make this mini album the same as this Graphic 45 album, and using my artisan cardstock, and I'm going to actually use another paper collection. So this video is going to have a couple different sections to it. The first section, or the first video, is going to be about making a basic album cover, because sometimes I like to be able to just go from the cover to decorating, and so it's nice to have a basic album cover done. So I'm going to do that, and then the next video is going to be about putting everything else together, the next collection, how I did this collection, and just show you the process for that. So today, let's work on getting our album together. We'll see where the time's at, and going to talk about the method that I used for doing this album. Very, very simple, and a quick way to put it together. So if you like what we're going to be talking about today, or you find you like it, please hit the like button and subscribe for any future videos. Hit the bell. But otherwise, let's get at it. And I have got some things prepared for us today to get started on our album. And so our album covers actually are going to be 6 by 8. So it means that there's 6, I can't do this right, huh? 6 by 8. And then our spine is 3 inches by 8 inches, so that everything should match up well. So what we're going to do is get our cardstock out. And this method of making our mini album can be used in any size. You just need to, use the same properties or principles for making the albums. So basically, what happens is that you need to make this sheet 2 inches larger on the top and on the sides. So our cardstock is 8 by 10. And I do recommend using Country Craft Creations Artisan cardstock. And I know some of you might be tired of hearing us say that, but the truth is that it's honestly the best cardstock I've ever used. It's the least prone to cracking or having any issues with it. I'm not going to say it never, ever, ever cracks, but it's least prone. The only time that I've seen that the cardstock cracks is, number one, when I've abused it because I was not real careful with what I was doing. And number two, it maybe was sitting around for too long and got pretty dried out. So that, if there's a lack of moisture in your home or where you live. But other than that, it's just perfect, and it holds up and it scores well. So get yourself some artisan cardstock. It'll be well worth it when you're making your albums. So what we're going to do is, I've got on here 1-inch spacers, and this is what I use for my mini albums to make sure that I have an even space all the way around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just glue this down onto here, and I have my tape on the back of here, and you can use whatever you want to use. I happen to have some scrapbook.com tape that I had bought on a 6-inch roll. But Tamara also sells the sheets. So I would suggest that it's good to get those sheets if you don't make tons and tons of mini albums. It's better off not to get a huge big roll, but otherwise you can get the roll. So what I'm doing is I'm using the tape down on the opposite side of this mini album. And the reason why I like using the score tape for this is because I get a beautiful finish on the other side. So let's go ahead and let's do our other cover. So I'm going to do and put this all together. So we'll do this together. Some of it I will be fast forwarding through. I don't want to make it overly long and boring. But the other thing I want to show you is that I try to get my tape perfectly over on my chipboard. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but don't bother about something like that. That is not going to ruin your mini album if you get it off on one side and you need to kind of redo it. Really not an issue, so don't fret about those things. And even if you're cutting your chipboard and you have a it's slightly off, try to fix it as much as you can. But again, you know, don't fret about it. Don't make a big deal, because most of the time you can fix those as you go through with putting your cardstock on. So it's only paper. All right, so we've got that score tape down. The other thing is that it is important to make sure that you do burnish that score tape and make sure that there's no air bubbles on it. And then we have a couple other sheets here. One is going to be for the inside spine, and one is to cover the spine. And with covering the spine, what we do is I still use the 1-inch score or placer for this cardstock. Okay, I can't get it in here. It's funny how inept you get when you turn the camera on. And then for the sides, these I do by 1.5 inches. And the reason why we do 1.5 is because we use these as wings for putting the front and back covers attached to the spine. But I'll show you that in a minute. And let me just grab my spine. This also comes with these 2 other placers from Country Craft Creations. So let me get my tape off of here. And I'll be honest with you, when I originally saw someone using these spacers, and I went ahead and cut it out of chipboard, and my chipboard ended up getting so kind of worn out, and it's difficult to make a 1-inch piece on a piece of chipboard. So I just decided it was much more beneficial for me to get a plastic spacer that will last me a lifetime. So, or acrylic spacer, whatever they're made out of. And so you can see even here I've got a little bit of a indent here, but that's not going to make any real difference in my album or my spine and wrapping. So one of the things that I do, because I think it's a softer way of getting my cardstock ready to be wrapped on the cover, is I take these cover pieces and I push them down and around on my mat rather than using my my scoring tool or my Teflon bone folder. I try to do this so that it, you know, it's just not so much wear and tear on the paper. Not that it's a ton of tear at any point, but I just think it's a good way to start. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to get my small scissors in here, and I'm going to cut on this side just above the top of this, and then I'm going to cut down on this side just over to this side. And I'll show you what we're going to do to make sure that we have this cut well on all of these sides when I'm done. Now, I used to do where you mitered in. And I've changed what I'm doing. I find that this works really well for me. Not that it doesn't ever have a problem, but I can tell you that I don't have a problem with it as much as I do with mitering the other way, because sometimes I just cut in too far. So now what we're going to do is make sure that we have nothing hanging over, and we're going to miter this in. So hit your scissors up against your chipboard and then just miter that in. Turn this one over and you can really see where we need to come in on this one. But we don't want to cut that corner. We want to keep it even with what we're doing. So again, this side needs to be cut. So you're going to do this to every side. And when you're cutting these, you want to make sure that you turn this so that your scissors is hitting up against that chipboard, so you're keeping this as an even line for your mitering. And you'll get a much nicer cut on your paper, and you won't cut into the corner of the paper. And it doesn't matter if you do the ends first or the sides first, just as long as you go all the way around. And you're going to find that you're going to have to flip it front and back. So now when I do this part, many people like to put score tape on here. I will be honest, I don't really like score tape for holding my albums down along the sides. I use my art glitter glue or my Barely art glue. Art glitter glue is my favorite, but I use both. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to run my Teflon bone folder up along the sides, getting that close into that chipboard to make it a nice clean score or edge to that. And then I come along here and I put my art glitter glue. I put it right in the edge of here, and then I come along here, and now I know that might look like a lot, but it isn't a ton because I have a fine tip on here. And I bring this in and I pull this down. Now I might have to hold it for a little bit because it is glue and it's not tape, but it holds very well. All right, so then I'm going to come over to this side and I'm going to run my glue along this edge. I've tried making albums a bunch of different ways, and I'll be honest, this is my favorite way, and I first saw this being done this way by Tamara, and I'm not doing it just because it's Tamara who's doing it. I do it this way because I like the way it turns out, and I like the way the cover looks and the spine looks, and I think that get good wear and tear on the cover that way. So but the thing is to try some things out and see what works well for you, because something that works well for me may not work well for you. But part of the reason why Tamara started doing covers this way is because we were on a cruise. It's probably 2 years ago now, and on the cruise there was some crafters that were there that were, you know, have a little bit of an issue with their hands and being strong enough to bend great big long pieces of cardstock in order to finish off the covers. And so she came up with this method of doing the covers rather than having these great big long sheets and everything glued together at one time. So that's why I'd like to do this video, is just so that on my channel, when I do other albums, you can always go back to watch this video and not have to go through a great big long video. So. All right, so then basically what that is our cover is done. Look at how nice those corners are, and it looks really, really nice. So I'm going to put this off to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and do my other cover. And I'm going to speed this up while I do it. All right, so let's go back to doing the, oh my gosh, is that terrible? Sometimes my brain just completely blanks on what I'm trying to say, the spine of the book. So we're going to do this a little bit different, and we have 1 inch here, 1 inch here, and 1.5 inches on this side. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to bend at this side, and we are going to bend here. And I do this a little bit different from Tamara. And actually the way I do it is the way she originally did it, but she's doing it a little bit different now. And what I like to do is to put this all together, glue it down, and then I'll show you where I go from here. Oops. So I'm going to put that all down. This way it covers the ends of my my chipboard, plus it covers any of the top sides of the chipboard. Do that. Then I'm going to go to this side. And do the same thing over here. I like to get right in between the chipboard and the cardstock. And then push that right up against the chipboard. I'm just going to rub this down really well. So that it dries really well. And then once I have gotten to this point, what I do is I come along here and I miter my edges with a slight miter so that I have that edge coming off of there, so that I don't have too much bulk on my spine. And this is the way that Tamara did it before. I think that she does cut this off now and she doesn't do this additional layer in here, but I just like the way I just do it. It's my way of doing it, and you can do either. So you could miter this or cut it, cut it right here and not have these pieces on here. Just cut this down and cut the corner out like you do with the other ones. But I like the way it looks. So that's how I'm doing mine. So, all right. So then what we're going to do, and this might seem a little bit unusual, but we're going to come into here and we are going to take our Teflon bone folder, and do not use a bone folder that is like plastic or sharp. You need to use a bone folder that has a nice rounded edge on it so that it will actually score your paper, crease your paper, but will not tear your paper. You want to, especially in the beginning, you want to just make sure you're gentle with it and bend some of those fibers. And I do go back and I do come in here to get the fibers in here as well. Just to kind of loosen them up. And this might seem like a little bit more than you need to do, but I tell you, in the long run, just prepping this helps with your cracking and your papers along the way. So then what we are going to do is I'm going to put this piece up toward here, and I am going to put this piece of the cover on top of, I'm going to match that up to the top of this and make sure that we're matched up on top and on bottom. And one of the things that I try to look for, that I know Tamara also says that if I push it, it pops up a little bit. And then I know I'm not too tight in here, but I'm tight enough that it'll all fit. So one of the things that is important to do, now some people will take and put a piece of score tape along this edge so that the glue doesn't come through. But I don't like to see any of the tape on there. So what I try to do is stay about 1/8 of an inch away from 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch away and not overdo any of the glue that comes down here. And then try not to squish my glue coming out of the ends. So I'm going to come in here, push that up, push that over, try to make sure I'm lined up well there. Roll that over, clean off any glue I might find on there. And then I'm going to come to this side and I will take this side and push it up on this mat. I always like to dry fit everything, even though I've already dry fit most of it, or I've looked at it prior to putting it all together. I make mistakes all the time, and sometimes it's because I just try to do it too quickly. And so, what do they say? Measure twice and glue once. And if you use tape, you can always use the product that's called Undo. I've never used it because I don't really use tape anymore. I do, like I said, on the covers, or I showed you on the covers, but I try to stick with my art glitter glue most of the time. And that's because I just know it to be that it does very well, and it holds really well. And I also read a lot of articles about, is tape better or is glue better? And one of the things that made really a lot of sense to me was in this article, it talks about that if a glue is good, if you find that you've had a lot of success with it, that over the years the glue will last longer than tape, because the tape would dry out, but the glue seeps itself into the cardstock, so it has a better time frame or retention time frame. Now I put tape on these. Ooh, didn't need to do that. Because it's just laying that piece down flat. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to start by bending this cover in a little, breaking down that cardstock a little. I probably should have waited a little while longer, but for the sake of the video, I don't want to do that. So what we've got here is we've got our album and our binding system. So here's our spine, is 3 inches across, and our cover is 6 by 8. And the final thing that we're going to do when putting this in, I cut out a piece of cardstock. I cut this 6 7/8. No, 7 and 15/16. So 6 and 7 15/16. But I think I might go back and cut it just a 1/16 of a bit more. I think it's just I want it to cover as much as possible, but I don't want it to go over the edge. So I'm going to take about a 1/16 off of it. And this is a Stampin' Up! Cutter. It's my favorite cutter for the majority of my cutting. But I do have about, let me think, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different cutters, because I keep trying different ones. And sometimes it's like there's ones that I like because they work for that situation. So there is no cutter that actually sits undone. This one. Let's see this. Okay. So what I am going to do with this is I'm going to go ahead and put glue on this, because it'll give me a little bit of wiggle time. With tape, I'll have no wiggle time. And I will put a little bit more glue on this only because it'll give me more wiggle time. But again, that's kind of, the glue-wise I'm putting on there is more of a scraping of the glue. So it's not... It's not big globs of glue. And that's the other thing, where sometimes people say that they don't like the glue because it marks on the other side of their cardstock. Most of the time that happens because you're putting too much glue on. And with art glitter glue, you don't need a whole ton of art glitter glue. I mean, you need to have enough so that it does hold, and it holds comfortably and holds well, but you don't need big rivets or rivulets of glue. Now, with this, I am going to leave this to dry for a little while before I bend it up, but just like I did with the other one, or the other point, is I gave it an opportunity. I bent it in, And this this style of album will help to make your covers lay more flat with your pages. So that's the other benefit of this type of cover. So we're going to do that. And then the other subject that just to talk about is normally what I do is I put a hinge in my mini albums. This hinge is a little bit shorter than I normally use. I don't know why I kind of cut it a little bit shorter. It's not bad though. The nice thing is though, by having this cut a little bit shorter, I'm not going to miter the edges on this, but it should be fine for the pages. Now you can do this type of hinge for your page hinges, or you can use the Stack the Deck. And this, because there's going to be 6 pages in this album, the Stack the Deck works just fine. You would need one big piece with 2 hinges, one on either end. Then you put another piece in the middle, and there's a hinge here, and you put one into the center right in there, and that would be just gluing one on top of another. So the measurements for this, let me get my ruler. This hinge bottom is 2 3/4, and the length, now I would make this probably just a little bit bigger. This is 7 inches and 1/8. No, 7 inches, yeah, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, 7 1/8 is the length of that. And this is our pages for our binder are going to be 7.5 by 5.5, 5.5 by 7.5. So I probably could have made this 7 1/4 is probably what I would have done. So the hinges are kind of a personal thing that you want to do, but what I'm going to do is place this in the middle of my spine so that I have about 1/2 of an inch here and 1/2 of an inch here so that it sits just even within there. So that is our binder that we are going to be making. This is going to be carried on to the next part where we're going to talk about the pages that go in this binder. Now again, every size is going to be a little different. I'm just giving you the sizes for a 6 by 8 mini album. So I end up doing some bending here so we can get this to lay a little flatter. And I will not bend it backwards because the type of spine that we have, we don't want to bend that backwards. So we've got that all in there. So if you needed to know about making a mini album, this is how we put this album together. And I'm going to end this video now so that it's not too long for those that want to watch how to make a mini album. And then I will come back to finish up the rest of the album, getting the binding in, as well as the rest of the pages, and talk about the decorating for this new album. So thank you for joining me. I am so glad that you did, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.